Hey everyone, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at how to use the node-based quest system that I developed for Unity. A quick note before we jump into it, you are going to want to have Unity 2018 installed. Specifically, I'd recommend version 2018.2.2, which I believe came out in early August of 2018. This might work on older versions, but I haven't tested it and I can't be sure of that. So just to be safe, if you want to use the asset, I do recommend version 2018.2.2. With that being said, I'm going to operate under the assumption that you've already already downloaded and installed the Unity package into your project. I'm going to be working off of the test project, which can be gotten off of my GitHub in the URL that I've posted on the description of this video. So the first thing is I'm going to have my sample scene open here, which has my player, which is this character with the purple hair. Then we're going to have two NPCs. One looks like Braid and the other looks like Mega Man from their respective games. And basically I can interact with them. So just to kind of show you what we'll have at the end of this, if I hit play, I can walk my character up to Braid and I can press Q and it will activate this quest dialog. It'll say go kill some flame lizards, and I can press space and I can accept the quest, and we'll see down here in my log that the quest was accepted and we added the flame lizards quest. Now I can go kill flame lizards. I can travel to the location, which is something you'll see later. It tells me the location objectives reached, and I can press J, which is just a hotkey I made to kill flame lizards. I can kill all 5 of them. I can return to Braid and press F to turn the quest in, and the quest is complete as shown here. And then from there, I can talk to Mega Man, and he'll tell me to kill rock goblins. I can accept, and it will tell me that I accepted the quest to kill rock goblins, and I don't currently have a key to kill rock goblins, but you kind of get the idea. So it's a very simple framework for implementing quests, and so we're going to look at how to build them using the tool. First things first, what you're going to want to make sure is in any scene that you want to use quests, you're going to need several prefabs. You're going to need this game state prefab, the dialog canvas prefab, quest loader prefab, the dialog loader, and the conversation handler. All these prefabs will be found inside the resources folder under prefabs, and you'll find under globals, you'll find game state. Under dialog, you'll find conversation handler and dialog canvas, and under loaders, you'll find dialog loader and quest loader. These two objects only exist at the start of the game, and then they destroy themselves after everything's been loaded. But you need all of those to work. The game state manages what state the game is in, essentially. The dialog canvas is the UI for the dialog bubbles that we saw in the demonstration. The quest and dialog loaders essentially iterate over these assets that we see here in my folder and parse the data and put them into quest in a way that we can use them in the game. And conversation handler is charged with dictating pretty much how all the dialogue interactions go. So the dialogue I've done a separate system for that I included in this package, and I also included documentation for it in this package. And if you want details about the dialogue system, I recommend referring to those documentations instead, if you want more specifics about the dialogue. Now, another thing that's important to set up the project properly is that you need to make sure you're using .NET 4.0 because of some of the code I'm using that uses the dynamic keyword. It only exists in .NET 4.0. So to do this, you want to go into Edit, Project Settings, Player, and then scroll down over here to where it says Scripting Runtime Version under Configuration. Choose .NET 4.x equivalent. You'll be asked to restart your computer. You'll be asked to restart the project. Go ahead and do that, and then you'll be able to compile the code. Another thing is that you're going to want to have your input set up. So Edit, Project Settings, Input. Specifically, we're going to need to have Interact Dialog. Basically, from here on down, we're going to need to have these things set up. The code is looking for these names for your inputs. And you can specify them however you want. Currently, Interact Dialog is the E button, Interact Quest is Q, Interact Turn In Quest is F. So when I press F, I try to turn in the quest. Next line is set to spacebar. Dialog select 1 through 9 is literally just 1 through 9 on the keyboard. but those have to be in place for the code to work properly. Beyond just the prefabs that we need, you're also going to need to have the proper tagging on your characters. Remember, any character that will be giving a quest has to be tagged with character. Additionally, the player has to be tagged as capital P player. Without those tags in place, things will not work properly. And that's something that I want to fix in the future. I want to try and make the use case more generic so that you don't have to rely on these very specific strings in the tags. But for now, you have to use those tags to make everything work properly. So how do I actually create a quest? Well, you'll see at the top of your screen here, once you import my package, you'll see a quest option. And if I click on quest and choose quest editor, you'll see this big old window show up. So over here on the left is where we will create finite state machines for the dialogue. And over here on the right is where pretty much the bulk of creating the quest occurs. So your save and load canvas, the canvas is essentially this whole thing. So any data that I put in here, if I click save canvas, it'll ask me where I want to save. It will default to this folder, assets, resources, quest canvas, which you want to make sure this folder exists unless you want to specify your own folder by modifying the code itself. But this is the folder that all the code's going to look at for quests. So you can save the canvas in here as an asset, and when you save, it basically holds all the information from here. And I can just as easily load a canvas by hitting load, and then, for instance, just to show this off, I'll double-click Flame Lizards. And you'll see all the data from the Flame Lizard quest show up in here. I'm going to go ahead and hit New Canvas to get rid of all that. The recalculate all button won't really be used. This is a basically residual thing left over from the open source framework that I worked off of here. And then we'll see what handle size does later. The main thing is for the quests, you have these variables here. So for quest name, we can put in a quest name. Let's just call this like a bridge too far, ... For the quest giver, what this allows us to do is select a prefab from our project as the quest giver. So whoever you want the quest giver to be, they have to be a prefab that exists in your project. So you can make it in your scene or whatever, but just make sure that the person who's going to be giving the quest exists in your assets as a prefab. So let's do a tracer here, for instance, which is IP of Blizzard, just to give my my acknowledgements there. And then what we'll see here is two buttons for adding and removing objective paths. The idea with an objective path is I wanted to be able to have concurrent quest objectives that have their own sub-objectives within them. This was largely inspired by The Witcher 3, where a lot of the main storyline quests in The Witcher 3 had multiple like concurrent quest lines within a single quest. Right, so one quest line might be like, oh, go to this continent, find this person, kill this bad guy, turn in this thing. Whereas the other quest line from that quest might be, oh, go to this different continent, find this thing, talk to this person, turn this thing in, kill this bad guy, right? But they're all part of the same quest. So the idea here was that we could create objective paths that have sub-objectives within them, and they can be completed concurrently at the player's discretion. So if I click add new objective path, we're going to see this drop-down list show up, which shows us all the available objective paths. So I can also create a second one, and we'll see two paths now. I can create a third one, we'll see three paths. And which one I select will change which objectives show up. If I click remove objective path, it will pop off whatever objective I currently have selected and remove it. So I'm going to remove all of them for now, and you'll see it goes away. So let's add a single objective path. This one will be called Kill Flame Lizards. And once you add the objective path, you can add an objective to this path. So we can click this, and we'll see sub-objectives show up with a couple buttons and a number to collect in an object field here. So let's hit like 5, and for the object, we'll click this, and I'm going to choose Flame Lizard. So this is a prefab enemy object. This means that it has an enemy script attached to it, which inherits, I believe, from a quest objective script. And so what I can do is double click on this and say that the player needs to kill 5 of these. And I could add a second objective if I wanted and say like, kill 3 rock goblins, right? And then what I can do is actually change these priorities. So I could put the flame lizards, if I click the down arrow here, it's going to move the flame lizard to sub-objective 1. So the objective path, even though you can do multiple objective paths concurrently, each objective path is completed linearly. So I have to complete this objective before I can start completing this objective. So if I wanted to be able to complete both simultaneously, what I would do instead would be say, let's delete this objective, the sub-objective 0, right? So I click the red X here to delete it. I would instead make a separate objective path, which would be kill rock goblins, right? And I could add an objective here to kill 3 rock goblins. So now I have 2 different objective paths. Both of these can be done concurrently instead of having to be done in a linear fashion. So that's the main difference between an objective and an objective path. An objective has to be completed in a linear fashion. So whatever comes before this sub-objective has to be done before I can actually start completing this objective. However, with objective paths, I can kill both lizards, flame lizards, and rock goblins simultaneously and get credit towards these totals. For the rock goblins, I'm going to delete this, and instead I'm going to call this go to location. And we'll add an objective path. And what I'll do here is specify this as test quest location prefab. So this is marked as a location. It has a location script attached to it as a component, which inherits from the quest objective. And when you want to specify like a location as a quest objective, basically what we do is we leave this set to 0. The code will automatically recognize this as a location and treat it differently. And so now I have 2 quest objective paths, and I'll leave it like this. So I got to kill 5 flame lizards, and I have to go to a location. Either of these can be done side by side, so I could kill 5 flame lizards, then go to location, or I could go to location, kill 5 flame lizards, or I could kill 2 flame lizards, then go to the location and kill the rest of the flame lizards, right? These options here, we have add prereq quest and remove prerequisite quest. So what I could do is say add prerequisite quest, and we'll see this prereq field show up, which is looking for a quest asset. Now, quest assets are created when we save the canvas. So when we save a canvas for a quest, this asset will be created, and it should show up in our project, or sorry, in our assets folder. So when I click on this, it will show me all the different quests I have that I can choose. So let's go ahead and say that I need a prereq for this. I'll assign it to flame lizards, which is the quest that you saw me demonstrate at the beginning of the video. So what this means is that this quest will be locked to the player until they complete the prerequisite quests that are listed. I could have a ton of prerequisite quests, so I could lock the player from this quest until, you know, some other quest is completed, or some many other quests are completed. Maybe you've got like 15 different quests you want the user to complete before they can access it. You can put that all in here. When I click remove, what's going to happen is going to pop off the end of the list. So I currently don't have the ability to move things up and down and remove them like I do here. That's something I'll probably update in the future so that you don't have to always pop off the end of the list. The required game state section is basically specifying that this quest is locked to the player unless these game states are met. So what a game state is essentially, it keeps track of things that have happened in your game. So the examples I have here are like a volcano erupted, right? So maybe in your game some big volcano erupts and destroys a nearby village. When that happens, you would set this state to be true. And once this state is true in the game, then you have this quest available to you, assuming the other prereqs have been met, right? So say the volcano's erupted and the users completed this quest, they can now access a bridge too far. Additionally, you could say, you know, boss 1 has to be defeated, player has to have walked 100 miles and volcano has erupted, or just maybe you just want volcano erupted. So I'm going to leave my quest like this. And instead of simultaneously doing the objectives to kind of show you the linear nature of the sub-objectives, we'll go ahead and do this. Let me remove this objective path. And then in Flame Lizards, we're going to add the location objective here. We're going to put it as the first objective. So the idea is the player has to go somewhere first and then kill the Flame Lizards. So now at this point, we look at how to create the dialogue interaction. So when you get a quest, generally there's going to be some kind of dialogue that occurs, right? So I can right click in here and choose add quest dialog. And again, I'm not going to go into major details about this because I've documented this in another YouTube video about the dialogue system, but I will highlight some of the differences with the quest dialogue versus a normal dialogue interaction. The main thing that you're going to see is on start states, which are states that do not have anything going into this input on the left. We're going to see this option for quest turn in and quest in progress. And what this means is that if I choose this as quest turn in, that specifies this dialog state as occurring when we turn in the quest. So this will happen when the player goes to the NPC and the quest is finished and they are telling the NPC, hey, I finished the quest, right? And now anything that is within this string of states, so anything that connects to this is going to be part of this conversation. Additionally, quest in progress is used for if the player has accepted the quest but they have not finished it and they talk to the NPC, then this set of dialogue will occur. So to kind of give an idea of what a general quest setup might look like, let's go ahead and kind of run into this. So for the speaking character, I'm going to say NPC Tracer is my first one, and I'm going to tell this that the player initiates the conversation. This means that the player has to go up to the NPC and speak to them by pressing the E button currently, and you can change those buttons in the input manager. Once you activate the conversation, this dialogue will happen, and maybe Trace will say, hey, go to this place and kill some flame lizards. Will ya? And then in here, I can select the speech style by clicking select, and I'll just choose a normal dialogue. So that's what it will look like. And then I'll add a dialogue choice here. So a choice node allows the player to have basically options given to them on how they want to go through the dialogue or if they want to accept or reject a quest. So let's hit add quest dialogue here, and we'll send option 1 up to this state. And so option 1 corresponds with the number 1 on your keyboard, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, etc. These are all modifiable in the Unity Input Manager. So once we have this state, again, we're just dragging and dropping. We're connecting these Bezier curves to the inputs of the next states that we want to go to. So this state goes to this choice state. Depending on the user's input, we'll fly to this state or some other state. So something that's specific to the quest dialog state is that we have an accept and reject quest option here when we're coming from a choice state. So the idea is that we can tell this dialog option to be a state that will accept or reject the quest, right? So for the description, I'll just say like accept and choose this as the accept option. So the description is what will show up as your choice when you look in the dialog bubble during runtime. So as you're playing, you'll see the option 1 will be listed and it will say accept next to it. Or I could say enthusiastically accept, right? And then it would show the number 1 followed by enthusiastically accept as the description. So I have to check this for accept quest for the code to know that this is the option that will actually accept the quest and put it into our player's quest book, essentially. And for the speaking character, it auto-populates the player, and maybe the player just says like, hell yeah, I will, right? And I'll choose the exclamation. And then we can add a final state here that goes from here, and this will be Tracer saying like, thanks, love. And that will be that. And I can collapse these to kind of clean up my workspace a little bit. And let's add another option here. And just kind of to show you the way choices work, I'll do another accept option, but this one will just be reluctantly accept, right? And it'll be like, well, I guess I can do that. Sounds a bit spooky though, right? And then maybe Trace will say something in return, like, I believe in you, love, you can do it. And then we'll do one last state here with the player saying like, Thanks for your confidence in me. And that will be that. So lastly, let's do a reject option. And this will just be straight up rejection. And we'll choose the reject quest option here and say, no way, that's way too dangerous. Sorry. And maybe Tracer will respond with just like a sad face. And so that's our basic quest accepting state. So the fact that we don't have quest turn in or quest in progress checked tells the code that this FSM here, finite state machine, is going to be for accepting the quest or hearing the initial quest dialog and then choosing to accept or reject it. Do notice that I don't currently have anything that prevents, I don't have any code that says if the user rejects this quest that they can never get it again, right? So the idea here is that you can reject but then come back later and get the quest if you want. I don't currently have any sort of implementation for absolutely rejecting a quest and preventing the player from ever getting it again upon rejection. That's something you would have to extend yourself on the code. So let's kind of close these out a little bit, free up our space. And then, so the way we add the other options is just creating new FSMs within the same canvas. So in here, I can choose this as quest in progress and say player initiates conversation, and the player says, hey, what am I doing again? And then we basically have Tracer respond and say, go to that location and kill 5 flame lizards. And then we can just have another thing here with the player saying, oh, that's right, thanks. And that's that. So now when the players accepted the quest, but they are not finished and they go to talk to Tracer, this dialogue will come out. And then, so for the last one here, we can do a quest turn in, and we'll have the player do this. Player initiates conversation, and then the player will say, hey, job's done. And then it'll be real quick conversation. Tracer will say, thanks, come back to me for more work if you're interested, love. And that will be that. And so at this point, we have all of our stuff set up. You can see how we can create pretty complex behavior with a pretty straightforward user interface. There are a few little things about the UI that I do hope to address in the future, but are kind of buggy currently. Which is that I can't zoom out here, unfortunately. That's why I created the collapse feature, to try and allow you to create a little more clean of a space. But you can't zoom this out at all currently. You can move around by clicking and dragging with your left mouse or your middle mouse button. One thing to note is that this panel over here is not considered like a collider. So if I click right here, you'll notice that my state got selected. And I can actually have problems if I'm trying to, if I use my middle mouse button to pan a lot, and if I click over here to pan, it won't work. But if I click over here to pan and there's a state that's underneath it, it will still grab it and move it. So these are things just to be aware about and bugs that I need to fix and address. But yeah, so our thing's basically done here. So let's save the canvas, and we're just going to call this test tracer, or sorry, a bridge too far. I typically use camel case for my names, so we capitalize the first letter of every word, no spaces, but you can do whatever you want with it. Then we hit save, and now I can close this, and what we'll see is if I look under resources quest canvas, we'll see a bridge too far listed here. We'll see all of our data over here, and we'll see all the different sub assets that got created with it. And then in the quest section, we actually have the quest object. And this is used in the code for different things that I won't really go into. So now what should happen is I need to make sure Tracer's in my scene, which she's not currently. So I'm going to go under my prefabs, characters, drag and drop Tracer into my scene. And the thing to be aware of with the characters who give quests is that they have to have certain things set up on them. First of all, they have to be tagged as a character with a capital C. So this tag must exist, and you have to tag your prefabs who you want to give quests with this tag. They need to have a circle collider with a trigger on it. This is how the player knows if they're in range, right? So when the player goes within, when the player goes within this green circle around Tracer, the icon to interact with her will show up, and you can speak to her. Additionally, NPCs must have this display NPC interaction, which will do the little E button above their head. This is more of a stylistic decision. This is something you could probably override on your own and implement your own sort of interaction situation. And then Dialogue Manager has to be attached for the dialogue system to work, and the Quest Giver script has to be attached for the Quest Giver script to work. I don't believe you need the rigid body here. I only had it for other purposes I was working on in my own game. But so let's check this out, see what happens, and make sure all this works. I'm going to clear my console here. And so when I hit play, let me open my console. I'm going to walk up to Tracer and try to get the quest. And so to get the quest, you press Q instead of E. Sorry, E is for normal dialogue, Q is for getting a quest. I had different systems I was working on, so the buttons are assigned differently. But I'm trying to press Q and nothing's happening. And that's because if you remember, we have a prerequisite that we have to finish the quest Braid has, which is Flame Lizards. And we also have to have the game state updated. So let's finish this quest first from Braid. So I press Q on Braid and he says, hey, go to this place, kill some Flame Lizards. I'm going to accept. Now his quest is the same thing as what Tracer wants us to do, but Braid's is different because I can concurrently do the quests. I have two different objective paths. I have one that tells me to go to the location, the other tells me to kill Flame Lizards. So if I look at my dialogue or my console right now, when I press J, I kill Flame Lizards, right? So I've killed two, and now let's walk up, and I reach the objective location. And just to give you an idea of what the test quest location looks like, it looks like this. It's literally just a transform with a circle collider. It's a prefab that gets instantiated when the game runs by the quest. So once the quest recognizes that this is the prefab we need, it's going to instantiate it at the XYZ position that we saved the prefab as. This is kind of my own implementation of a quest objective. You don't have to use this, but the general idea is basically that you would create this transform, put it where you want, give it the collider you want, and once the player enters this area, it counts as them having entered that quest objective. And when runtime occurs, that objective automatically gets spawned into the scene, so you don't actually have to have it sitting in your scene normally. Once I pass over this location, you'll see it says location objective reached. So I finished I finished that objective path, but I can't go turn into Braid. So if I go to Braid and I press F, what we'll see is that I'm trying to turn in the quest. F is my key for turning in the quest. I know these are very arbitrary keys, but I was just testing a lot of stuff. That's how I have it set up. And we'll see that we get the in progress dialog. I say, hey, what am I doing again? He says, go to this place, kill Flame Lizards. And I'm like, okay, that's right, thanks. So let's kill some Flame Lizards, go to 0 left, and now I can go to Braid and turn in the quest. Says job's done. He says, awesome, thanks. Tells me the quest is complete. So at this point, let's try talking to Tracer. I press Q, she's not giving me the quest. And if we remember, that's because I need the volcano to have erupted. Now, again, I have another hotkey I've made for testing this. If I press V, what we'll see in my log is that we unlock the state volcano erupted. So this state has now been set to true, and that means that when I go to check this quest with Tracer, and I try to activate it, and press Q, I can now get it. Because I've unlocked the volcano erupted, I've completed the prerequisite quest. Now she says, hey, go to this place, kill some flame lizards, will ya? And so I can enthusiastically accept, reluctantly accept, or just reject. And I've got some weird word wrapping issues here that I just recognized. So that's something I'll have to add to the list of things to fix. So let's choose the enthusiastically accept option. I'm like, hell yeah, I will. And she says, thanks, love. And it tells me I got the quest. And so I have to kill flame lizards and go to a location. but we set up the quest in a way that we have to first go to the location. So I can click on J to try and kill flame lizards, but you'll see that it's not showing me as killing flame lizards in my log. So let's go up here and go to the quest location, and it tells me the objective's reached, and now if I press J, I can actually kill the flame lizards. So that's an example of a linear quest with a single sub-objective. Now it's done, I can go here and press F. I'm like, hey, job's done. She says, thanks, come back for more work if you're interested, love. And then it tells me the quest is complete. So another piece of this editor is the ability to create and destroy game states that can be used within the game. So up here at the top, we have a game state menu item, and we have game state editor. So if I click on this, we'll see this is a lot more straightforward. I basically have two buttons, add new state and save data. If I click save data, it will basically save what I have here into an asset, specifically into the game state data here, and it will create multiple states based on what are in the list. And these states are loaded at runtime, and basically you can use them to manipulate, like if something happens, you can send a message to all the code that says, hey, this state has occurred, so update the game state. That's essentially the point of the game state prefab here. So if I wanted to say add a new state, we'll see this field pop up, and I would just fill it out. It's just a string, so I could say like boss2 _ defeated. And this thing auto-saves pretty frequently. I think whenever I create a state or remove a state, it auto-saves. But usually just to be safe, you want to click Save Data. And we'll see that boss2 defeated gets created here as an asset. And we'll see this asset updates with boss2 defeated as element 3. And if I close this, it will do an autosave again. But if I close that and I go into Quest Editor now, we'll see boss2 defeated show up over here on the right. Now, the game state system is a lot more, there's a lot less to interface with from a UI perspective. If you want to make use of turning on and turning off game states, you're going to mostly need to get familiar with the C# implementation. And I've outlined pretty much how you do this within the how to use Quest Editor PDF file under the game state section. Essentially, you'll be using a messaging system to broadcast and listen for game state changes in the scripts that you care about who should be broadcasting or listening to these changes. So like earlier when I demoed and I pressed V, I have some script, I think just my game state script. I had a test feature in here that says when the user presses V, broadcast a message that volcano erupted has occurred. And then once that's true, we're able to access certain quests. So that's basically how you access the game state editor. Also, I can delete. So say I want to delete this, I can hit the X there. It will kill it. It will autosave. And now if I look in my states, that state no longer exists. If I look on my game state data, it no longer exists. And if I go into my quest editor, it no longer exists. Now, you don't have to use this syntax for the how the states read. I just did that myself. You could just as easily call this like volcano erupted with all lowercase, no space. This is just the style I decided on for my own purposes, but you can do whatever you want there. It's just a string value, so you can type whatever you want and you're good to go. So that's game states. So yeah, that's the broad overview of the system. Hopefully this will save you some time. I can understand if it's not quite robust enough for some people, but this was basically a personal project that I worked on, and I do hope to extend it in the future. If you do run into any bugs or you have some recommendations, or even if you have just constructive criticism or critical feedback, I'd love to hear it. And you can find my email address within the documentation, which you'll find in the Assets Node Editor folder under How to Use Quest Editor. The PDF file, you'll find my email in there and you can contact me, and I'd love to hear your feedback. And I'll try to take it to heart. And again, I just want to thank you for checking the asset out, and hopefully, like I said, it helps you. And if not, that's fine. And thank you. Hope you have a great day.